Good morning. I just wanted to talk about real quick the fixation that our society has right now on hating the elites or hating the those that govern us, the political parties, um, the famous people, um, the elites, the cabal, whatever have you, and I just I've been scrolling through TikTok and I'm seeing so many videos. So because everyone's starting to wake up and they're starting to really see things and they want somebody to blame. Of course, that's human nature. Right now, that's our nature is to look for somebody else to blame. Sure. But it's not going to serve us in any way to continue hating these people. And this is not a love and light message. I'd like to just bring to the awareness of us or anyone else who's watching this that whatever density we perceive in this world is because we contain it. We would not be able to exist here unless we contain some of this density. And by here, I mean this 3D realm, this dense plane. Now, I don't mean we're going to die or we're going to go to like a heaven or anything like that. It's the transmutation. We all have to do it together in order to all live together in a elevated plane, which is the fifth dimension, right? That's the goal. That's what we're trying to get to. And that exists here, but many of us can't perceive it because we still hold so much density within us. So, the galactic war that happened, without going too far deep into it, because to be honest with you, I don't know the details to the degree that I would need to really teach a seminar, but I know the basics of it. And the galactic war that happened, many planets were destroyed, and then those beings needed to re-inhabit other planets. The elites, like we like to call them, or the cabal, they are a very dense species, and they just genetically do not have the coding for compassion or for empathy. So, and it's because their coding is very dense. They can't contain that type of, because empathy is very high frequency, right? Compassion is a very high frequency. Love is a very high frequency. They don't have that. So, Earth was a cozy place for them because it has density. Now, it wasn't quite dense enough for them to be fully comfortable. They needed to make it a bit more dense. So, lo and behold, they began creating a society based on money, and they hijacked this planet, if you will, and created this dimension of the false matrix, is what I call it, where we base everything on money and very little emotional values, and where we are taught subconsciously and consciously to ignore our subconscious and our innate natural way of life, natural way of living, to create this density. So how do they do that? They instill fear and lies and everything else, and blah blah blah. We know that story. But what I want to say is, if we want to change this planet, if we want to ascend, if you will, because that's the word everyone's using, if we want to move into a higher frequency realm or a higher dimensional realm, then we need to recognize that this density that we hate in them exists inside of us. Because not one of us is free, is absolved of lies or manipulation, because we have subconsciousness. We live in polarity. Polarity creates that density. None of this is bad or evil. It's just density or light and a spectrum of it. So all of our genetic coding, because we've been hybridized and mixing of genetics, we all contain the capacity to hold this density, some of us more than others. I I am A negative. I have O in my genetics because I know that because I have in my family line O genetics. And O negative in its pure bred form is void of empathy. However, I have the interbreeding of other genetics, meaning I have the balanced coding of empathy and compassion and other things. And most of us are all interbred. However, there are some that maintain a pure bloodline, which is the reason for interbreeding in the royal family and so on and so forth. And there's probably other things that play with that too, but I'm just trying to get a basis of this for the sake of integration. So if we all have this O genetic, if we all have somewhere in us, we don't all have an O genetic. That's not what I meant to say. Most likely, most of us do, but not all of us. But what O genetics have is a density, and if we all have that density due to our matrix that we live in, and due to the fact that it is intentionally, our subconscious is intentionally formed within us and intentionally preserved within us. And that is done by social conditioning, where we, like I said, we ignore our compassionate nature, we ignore our density, we view it as the dark, and no, we're going to avoid that, we're going to only look at the light, it's only love and light, and we should hate the dark, and I say this in many of my videos, human beings are not fighting the darkness, we are fighting the light, because we are desperate to not see the darkness. We are desperate to not see the shadows in the darkness. And that is what the purpose of this video is. So, what does that look like integrating into our everyday life? Rather than every day saying these evil elites are taking over our world and now we're waking up to it and we're going to take them down and they're not going to win and so on and so forth. Instead of fixating our consciousness, our scope of our view into that perception, instead turn it inward. Turn it inward, because we are inverted beings. Every problem we look to solve it outside. And that's what we are trying to flip into right side out, where we look for every problem that's out here on the inside, because that's where it began. The only reason that these elites have power is because we looked to them to have it, because we stopped believing that we had it. And did they foster this within us? Absolutely. Did they set a stage where we would be fooled into more and more over the years, to be fooled by believing more and more that we don't have this power and that they do? Yeah, absolutely they did, but who gave them that permission? It's like when you get into an abusive relationship, if you've ever been in one, and at first maybe you don't recognize what you're getting into. Maybe you don't recognize what's coming. Maybe you just saw the best in this person, and then the abuse begins. But then whose fault does it become? And I don't want to call it fault because I don't like the word fault, but who's contracting to this now? Who is willingly contracting because they are still looking to this other person for security and safety rather than looking for it in themselves? So that's where we are. Because we are looking for an outside entity to save or help us, now that we're all realizing that this structure has power and malevolent power and intent, and they don't want to see the best in us. They don't want to see the best for us, rather. They don't want to help us. This government was never built to help us. It was never, ever, 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 not even this much, built or designed for us. Maybe the original documents that came out that our founding fathers signed had the intent of being for the people, but it never reached it. It was hijacked immediately. So that's why I say, this structure of governance was never designed for the people. Many people think that it was, and it was at first, and it was for a long time, but then it kind of got corrupted by money. No, that's not the story. This structure was never, ever, from day one, serving the people. Now, back to where it was. So, in our everyday life, instead of getting on the train of, yeah, we're going to take these guys down, or these guys need to go down, or these guys need to be killed, and whatever else, right? Instead of focusing our aim there, if we turn inward and say, these guys, these guys need to remember their power. These guys need to integrate that they hold darkness within them. And darkness or density is not bad. I've had a lot of trauma in my life, and I don't think I would have been able to even go through it and remain alive if I didn't hold some density within me. My genetic coding had a large capacity for density, and it also had a large capacity for light, and that's why I still remain here. So therefore, I just want to say that the density within us, we have to really try to stop looking at it as good and bad. That's polarity. That's what keeps us in the subconscious. It's a spectrum of density and light, and we all have this spectrum. The awareness of this spectrum is what allows us to live in a more harmonic way with each other. Because when I have a density, when I feel that I dislike something or don't agree with something, that would be a negative. That would be a density, but it's not wrong. The wrong part would be lashing out at you because I don't agree with it, right? So the observation of this density is where we need to go. And the only way we can achieve that is by going within. And what does that mean, right? Everyone's like, go within, go. What does that mean? That means every time we jump on our program, which is to look outside of ourselves for the cause of all of our ailments and ills and everything else, every time we do that, to revert it back within us, not to find fault. This isn't about like, well, you did it to yourself and finding out that we did it to ourselves. That's not the goal here, because that's more polarity. That's more blaming, pointing a finger. We're not trying to point a finger. We're trying to build, rather than be in the negative, we're trying to build more positive and bring more light into this density so that it's balanced, right? So instead of going in and saying, well, is this my fault? Did I cause this? Instead saying, where do I exist in this experience of suffering that I am holding here? In this experience of, I am ill now, I am sick. And instead of looking at this experience, this one experience of I am sick, and saying, whose fault is it? Instead of that, saying, where can I change this? Where can I observe this for what it actually is? Is it actually a matter of somebody harmed me? Is it a matter of I harmed myself? Is it a matter of I chose to indulge in things? That can be part of it, but we're observing it. To observe that, okay, I indulged in these things. Okay, why did I indulge in these things? Well, I didn't really know that they were this bad. I didn't really know what they were going to do to me. Okay, now do I? I don't? Okay, let me find out. Let me just learn what these things did to me. And then let me look within myself to see if I can stop doing these things. And then if I can't, let me ask for help from Creator if I can't stop on my own will. And Creator, we're going to find, lives inside of us. And that is why many will say that we are gods or we are of gods. Aaron is not a god. The ego is not a god. Not even the soul is God. The spirit, the divine spark that is creation is God. And that lives inside of us. That is within us. And that's where we are trying to get back to. a soul will travel around to different incarnations, and then it's probably the etheric body of us. The etheric body is the one that travels from soul to soul, from life to life. And then the physical body is the ego, it's the density. That's where we hold this. And that's where what exists here. This is our vehicle. This is the soul's vehicle. But what runs the soul, which is a body, it's just an etheric body, it's more light, is the divine spark of creation, of God. So, who is observing? When we say let's observe, who is observing? It's that spark. It's consciousness. And consciousness is experiencing itself. God is experiencing itself within this dimensional plane, within this density. And that experience is a program. And that's why they call us AI. But we are not AI in the way we think. We are not metal, the metal robots that we think. We are made of metal, though. However, we are made of metal, right? But we are organic metal. And there's a difference. We are organic AI. We are organic programs. And that's only, and I don't mean we as in our whole essence, only in our physical form. In this body, Erin, the program of Erin. The program of Erin was initiated on January 15th, 1984, in Boston, Massachusetts. And that program, that date that I just gave you, is a code, is a coding. The place I was born is a coding. The degrees of where I was placed when I came into this physical form, when I came through the duat of my mother's womb, is my coding. And this is why I align with an astrological chart and a planet and so on and so forth, because I'm a code. I'm a genetic coder, right? And each life that I lived, like I had a past life as an Essene. I had a past life as a Cathar. Each life that I lived was a coding, and it played out in the life that I lived going forward. And traces of those codings stay with us, which is what they call junk DNA, right? But those are still in me. And this is why we have memories or resonances of our past lives. Our ancestors, that we call our ancestors, are actually just us in a different vehicle. It's our soul in a different vehicle. Hope that makes a little more sense. So, with saying all of that, let us change the initiative. Because if we're really saying that we want to change the world, that's a big word. And we wouldn't say it if we didn't believe we could. However, we're being made to believe that we do it in a very different way than how it should be done. We're being made to believe we have to do it in a very third-dimensional way, which is hating and pointing the finger and waiting. How many of us are waiting? We're just waiting. I don't know. It's just all going to just do it. It's just all going to change. Yes, the poles are shifting. Gaia is fucking moving. Excuse me, I didn't mean to swear. Gaia is moving. But who is Gaia? Who are we made of? We're made out of Gaia. Although we are star beings and we came from these other planets, we are also genetically coded of Gaia. We're both. We're bringing the heavens to the earth and the earth to the heavens. And that's what that means, right? So we are more powerful than we ever understood. So instead of creating an initiative to wait and hate, which is density, right? Which is okay, it's within us. Why don't we begin being the creatures of creation that we are? Right? Why don't we begin creating instead of, okay, so my program is anger, resentment, fear, but let me change my program, because we can do that. We can do that. We can change the coding at any time. This suit will always be Aaron, who was born January 15, 1984 in Massachusetts. It'll always have that coding, but the false matrix that I was instilled with as I grew up, sorry, very itchy nose, the false matrix that was encoded in me as I grew, because my true coding should have been the law of the land, the law of nature. That's what it should have been. When I was born, encoded being Aaron Arnold, I should have been here and lived on to the law of nature, but instead I lived under the law of man and the way of man, right? So that's where our density came from. So let's return that. Let's return. The law of nature says I'm a creator and that nothing governs me. Not a license, not a law, not a stipulation, not a mandate, not even schooling or history. Nothing governs me. Nothing I have learned up until this point in time, in my 39 years on this planet, nothing that I have learned up until this point is who I am. It's just a program that can be rewritten, right? That's the false matrix that was uploaded in me, uploaded in all of us. So we can change that program. We can turn ourselves right side out again. And we can do that by going within and pulling that outward. Instead of looking for the answers outside of ourselves, we can find them inside of ourselves. And then we can create that. Because in my manifestation videos that I say, right, it's when we go within and we go into that etheric place, that is where we manifest. That is where that is our wand. Our mind is our wand, and we use our mind to go into this place, into the heart center, which is the connection to that etheric realm, and we can manifest what we want on this earth plane. We are the ones that are going to save us, and we're going to do it by beginning with us. So let's stop telling everyone, wake up, you stupid sheep. That is density. That is more density. That is more of you being who you claim to hate, which are these dense beings. Instead, let's go within and be like, why am I saying that? Am I a sheep too? Am I the sheep that I speak of? And once you do that, you'll change your perception, because none of us want to be those dense things that we claim we aren't. So when we say, have I been a sheep somehow? Yes, the answer is yes. We've all been sheep. We have all been sheep. We have all blindly followed something because we were taught to since we were babies. So that's why you hate other people. That's why you call them sheep. That's why you hate them. That's why you're annoyed with them. That's why you blame everything on them. We are all sheep. We have all been sheep. We have all been led to a slaughter, so to speak, every single one of us. So let's look through that and re-examine our sheephood. Let's look through that and say, do I want to be a sheep anymore? I know that's been the program up to now, but do I really want to be this? Do I want to be a creator? Let's be creators.